All right, now we're with Dan Allen. He's the owner of the building.
What got me interested in the building was driving by it and seeing it slowly deteriorating, but yet knowing that the bones were still good. The gutters and stuff were falling off, falling down. They weren't doing their job, and a lot of the water was just going right down in on the ground. I knew it was getting in the basement. I thought, if I don't say something, one of these days I'm going to see a wrecking ball going through there and wish I'd said something. So I'd called one of the county commissioners and asked what were they doing with the building, and they said, well, we've had several people interested in it over the years and nobody had a good business plan for it. And I have a place in Hartford City, the old Blackford County Jail in Indiana, that I'd had for 15 years at least. What I was doing with that, I thought could work here. So I came up with that business plan to actually make it a multi-use building, apartments or something like that. Just absolutely ruins the inside, which I don't consider saving the building, because once you've got the inside and put on the certain stuff you have to outside, then you might have 40% of the building left. So I like to keep them intact as is, inside and out. And my love for the building is the history, the architecture. I don't ghost hunt much, don't have time really, but I don't know if I believe in ghosts. I've seen stuff, but I got my own theory on what we see. I know people see it, they hear it, because I do too. But is it a spirit? That's the part I'm not sure what it is. Nobody knows, and that's what makes it fun. I hope they never find Bigfoot, UFOs, or ghosts. That would take a lot of fun out of a lot of stuff. The stuff I saw here was, I'm the owner, so they're going to say, well, you made it up to sell the place. I don't do that. I don't fake anything. I don't intentionally tell the mistruths. We've heard of stuff happening, but nobody can back it up with facts, so we have to take that out. A gut feeling doesn't count as happening, so mediums, unless they can verify, which they can sometimes, they're pretty good. But unless I can factually back it up, I won't say it's part of history. Now, granted, in these type of places, somebody died of a seizure and fell down the steps. Actually happened here, but he fell down 3 flights of steps. The last flight you have to fall down, you have to actually walk 30 feet to go around to keep continuing to fall. So, yeah, like one guy says fell out of a second-story window. Well, it was 1944, so it really wasn't that long ago. And the family of their great uncle came in and said, no, he was pushed out, and they told us the whole story. And it was everything exactly happened. Fell out the window. It was their point of view, factual. I would say most likely, because somebody to fall out a window, that's hard to do. Now, if he was helped out the window, and all the reasons why, which all made sense, I would say that's enough to convict somebody in court of law. So I think we're going to go with something like that. There was a judge who had a lot of money, and he loved people. So he actually, as he got older, he said, I just want to live out here. So he paid his way in. And he knew the war was coming. So this is before World War II. It says all of Europe's in the war. Eventually we're going to be in the war too. So we're going to have people in here that aren't fit for combat, and being alcoholics one way you can't get drafted, and we're going to have those derelict type people here. So he knew it was coming, and so to keep order, he volunteered a kangaroo court up in the attic, and there's even a jail cell back there, I guess they used and such. So I guess now Ted hopefully can show you the evidence on that, but he wanted to help keep order here, and that's when the guy was actually thrown out the window during World War II in here, and from one of those thugs he knew was coming. So when something happens and you research it, all of a sudden, you know, it'll just mesh, and you say, okay, it all makes sense now. And I think that's one of the stories that made sense. Exciting happened. It was right down this hallway here. I was coming up the backside, and because I heard a noise up here, and I ran up, and I didn't realize I didn't have a flashlight. So the guy was with me. I said, go get a flashlight, and there was like three of us here as well. It's getting kind of cold, so they were down in the room getting warming up. I said, go get a flashlight. I'll stay right here and make sure they don't wander off, because then I'll know where they're at, and we'll go and tell them to leave. I just assume it's somebody coming in. So when the person goes down the steps to get the flashlight, I hear the person walk on down the hall. Now it's pitch black, I can't see anything. They walked on down the hall and went to about the third door towards the end. I couldn't tell, but that's what it sounded like. And stopped, opened the door, walked in, closed it behind them. It was so realistic. So you could hear the door handle turn, everything, walk through, shut the door behind them, and kind of a muffled 2 or 3 steps after that. The estate wanted people to do something with the indigent people from pretty much when they became a state in 1818 or 1819. So by 1820, they had something in this area here. So this place, this ground has been here since 1820s. Or 1820. So we know we have 50 some people out back in the graveyard, but the records didn't start till 1900, because this place was built in 1899 and probably started the records in 1900. So we've got 80 years of people possibly out back. We're trying to get ground penetrating radar or something to find them, because it was called the Pauper's Grave. We know it exists, but can't find it on any map anywhere that I know. And one person, I think he's a surveyor in town, but don't quote me, but he thinks he knows where it's at, but it just seems too close to the building. That's not a very good morale builder, being that close to the building. But he pretty much swears it is, and they may have had an orchard. They said it's by the orchard, so they may have had an orchard where he couldn't see it. You know, orchard's gone, so, you know, it could be a lot of variables, and it could be there. So here, when they didn't embalm and somebody died here, they put them in the front where the witch's indention in the living room, and they had volunteers to watch them. Cholera came out. It was so contagious. And you could get sick in the morning, be dead by that afternoon. It was so contagious that they buried them 6 feet under to make sure that it wouldn't come back up, and sometimes even away from other parts of the cemetery. So if some of the older ones, you see some off to the side, they may have died of cholera. You know, it was 20s, I think, 20s or something like that, that came through Randolph County. Well, they had so many people dying of cholera that morticians were overwhelmed, so they brought them out here and laid them in a room downstairs to embalm them later or whatever they were going to do with them. But it was at one time a full functioning pork farm too. In World War II, the Army, I guess, didn't pay their soldiers well enough. I mean, they were coming out of a depression, and shoot, all the people in the war and all the material. Luckily, they paid them at all, I guess, but so a lot of the families lost their home. So women and children came out here, so they had a lot of kids out here during World War II, and a lot of physical able people, but no place to go and no money to live on.
One of my first experiences here was when I was one of the first nights I stayed here, and I was doing some work, and then I ended up just staying here in the room up front there, and I got woke up a couple times during the night, like someone was sitting on the edge of my bed, and it kind of freaked me out, and I was like wondering what was going on. But that was the first thing that ever happened to me here, and it happens every night when I stay here. And right where you're standing, I got grabbed in the back of my neck when I was the only one here. And I've had that, those were the first two things that really happened to me here. Way back, I'd say about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, we were cleaning the sewers out. And I brought this plumber from my town, and he's a biker and a big bad dude, you know, and he was over here and we're cleaning it out. And we were clear on the other end of the building in the basement with a snake cleaning the sewer out, and he was getting scared. Now this is a big bad biker, okay? And he was getting scared. He wanted to get the hell out of here because we're down that end, and doors were slamming throughout this whole building. And it just that he never wants to come back here again. I hear it all the time. When I'm sleeping, I'm hearing doors slam, and you could attribute to the pressure inside of here or whatever. You know, you could always debunk whatever. But I'm used to the doors slamming in here when I'm here by myself. So, and there's a door downstairs that's about 5 foot wide. It goes into the chow hall downstairs. And I'm on a ladder, putting a valve on this water line, and the door shut right in front of me. I grabbed my shit and I ran out of here. I mean, it really freaked me out. The door just shut right in front of me. And then I came back about 20 minutes later, you know, and it's never moved in front of me since.
But there was a woman that hung herself in this building.
Yes, there was, Ted can tell you about all that. Ida Dunkel hung herself downstairs. She was dropped off here by her family. Her husband was a traveling salesman or whatever, and he ended up getting syphilis, and he died from it. And he gave the syphilis to her, and then she started going nuts, and then her family dropped her off here. And there was an old guy that got pushed out of the window on the other side over there, and he died there. And I know there's a guy that, like I said, Ted can tell you their names and when it happened, but a guy fell out of the hay mow over there and died over there, on the outside of the barn. So, you know, and there was a cook here. She got here like when she was, you know, not even a teenager yet, and she stayed here and she was a cook till the day she died. So
Randolph County Historical Society, I'm the president of that. Okay. I'm also elected to Randolph County Board. I'm a county council member. So if I tell you stuff, I got it documented. I definitely got it documented, okay? But there's a lot of history, especially on this floor. You know, I was telling you about the guys that wouldn't get drafted, and they were warned about, well, they were thugs. They're just like in today's penitentiaries, you know. And they were doing organized gang rapes, organized stealing, and everything else. And that's got a lot to do with why that jail cell's there. That retired judge I was telling you about knew that they would have that problem. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of them belonged there. They were terrified of that judge because I said he was retired. Well, he has no authority, right, if you're retired. So what he did was got the okay of Studi, who was the caretaker here, and Studi let him do anything he wanted to do to help keep the peace here. So these thugs were afraid that this judge might just hang them. And so they were terrified of him. They left him alone. But down the hall down there, on the second door back from the end, John Oliver was 86. And he wasn't afraid of the thugs at all. But they didn't like him at all. Because every time he would get word of something that they might do, he was ratting them out to Studi, the caretaker. Well, you look at it from a thug standpoint, John Oliver's got to go, doesn't he? And they're all washing the windows here on the second floor. Inside and out, by the way. So John Oliver does his inside window, you know, and stands on a chair to get to the top of it. The guy is 86 years old, and he's not going to climb up no extension ladder to get to the outside of his window at all. He's too old. So what he does, he tries. So he opens the window from the inside, then he turns around and sets backwards in the windowsill, then closes the window down kind of on his legs, and then he's sitting there reaching up as high as he can reach up from the outside, washing the windows, and two of them guys come in his room, picked his feet up and shoved him on out the window. And Studi was coming from the barn over there back to here, and he seen John Oliver fall out the window. And he notes in his logbook says he also saw two guys watching him fall and then ran away from John Oliver's window. So they never did prove who it was that shoved him out. And they knew that they would get away with anything that they wanted to get away with, and they did. There was 3 more murders of people here on this floor, right here, that were trying to give them a bad time, wasn't going along with them. Well, over a period of 2 or 3 years, 3 of them, at one time or the other, didn't come down for breakfast. So they would come up here looking for them and find them still in bed with pillows over their faces. So they were actually getting murdered, 4 of them here, and these guys got away with it. And there was another thing about this place out here, is that how many times have you walked into a nursing home and you see some poor soul sitting there in bed or something, and maybe his family hasn't come to see him for a couple of years? He's sitting there talking about his son or talking about his daughter or something like that, and they've never come to see him. There's a lot of cases where people put their relatives or friends or whatever in a place like that and pay somebody else to take care of them, and then they never go back. That was a lot of that happened out here too.
Those are the ones that were buried behind the barn too, right?
Yes, right. There was a great deal of that happened out here. A lot of people would put their loved ones in out here and then never come see them. Never come see them. And that has a lot to do with why the thugs got away with as much as they did, because the sheriff's department wouldn't come out here either. They didn't want to, because there's lunatics out here. And in the log books, it's actually got several of them listed as a lunatic. There was no fancy words for it then. They called a spade a spade. So. But this is the one that old John Oliver champ was pushed out of. They couldn't prove anybody in here did it, you know? And what's really funny about that is that, well, they just could never prove that it happened. And when they went to write it up in the newspaper and everything about the old guy that falls out the window, the accident, death and everything, they portray the whole thing like it was an accident. His family knew that he was shoved out that window. They knew he was confident enough. There's no way he fell out that window. He was helped out that window. And they argued that case for years. As a matter of fact, they still argue it, because I went to Ridgeville trying to find relation. And they all feel, they've all been told throughout their whole lives that he was murdered. So, this is a jail cell that the judge had put in here basically in 1940. That's when he had warned Studi that there was going to be some people here that he wasn't going to like. They just were not good people. And they went to Winchester and they bought a jail cell. And right here it is. And it still works today, and this is 2019. So it still would serve its purpose. There's been several people locked up in here. The retired judge used to hold mock trials up in the attic. Now, no, he doesn't have any authority. He's retired. But as long as Studi goes along with what he's doing, this judge has basically got all kinds of authority. And the thugs and stuff that was on this floor were scared to death that he might just hang them. So they basically left him alone. But whenever somebody up here would get caught stealing somebody's jewelry or a watch or something like that, petty stuff, well, he would actually hold that mock trial upstairs in the attic, and they would sentence people to different periods of time in here. Now, it wasn't like you're going to get 5 years in here. It may be 2 or 3 days or something like that. Basically just a slap in the wrist. You know, that's bad. You mustn't do that. But I guarantee you, when that door goes shut and you're inside and it locks, you definitely get an unlike that. In this room right here, it's got a slanted wall. And it's got a slanted wall because this building, if you fly over it in a drone and look down on it, it looks like it's built as a Christian cross. The slant over here was so you would utilize more space rather than just square it off. So that's why it's here. Now, there's a maintenance room down below us that's like that, and up above us was that jail, was where that jail was. But the other 4 rooms that are like this all have medical background behind them. There was a toilet right back over there in the corner. There's, of course, running water. They can get 3 of them beds in here. If you've got cholera, you're going to be in this room. And the odds are really good you're not going to come out of this room. And it doesn't matter whether it's male or female, because if you've got cholera, you're not going to be out there walking around contaminating everybody else. This room right here was one that you didn't want to come in. You know, because if you wind up in bed in this room, that may be the last room you ever see. No. But Doris Addington, the little girl that I told you was dumped on the front porch here, she passed away in this room. She had 70 years in this place. She probably helped cook every meal. She was a great cook. The only thing that was wrong with her was her speech was off somewhat. You know, she was a great, but she had a doll collection, obviously. And every place she went, her dolls went with her in this building. And when she was put, she had the flu. The flu. She's 81 years old, though, and it killed her in 2004. But her dolls were in here with her. Now, all of these dolls are hers. They really are hers. So she was a great lady, though. Very good. There's nothing terrifying about Doris. She probably had a half a dozen different rooms in here, but this was her last one. She had all kinds of opportunities to leave. There was a lot of her family still around this area, the Addington family around this area, and she had a lot of opportunities to leave, but she just didn't want to. This was home. During World War II, of course, all the men are in Europe or in the South Pacific fighting for their country. Their wives and kids are at home. And military spousal pay during World War II was not good. So while these guys are over in Europe or the South Pacific fighting for their country, the wives are trying to get along the best they can at home with what money they've got. And if they couldn't make a house payment or payments, they would lose their properties. The banks would repossess. Let's say you're a lady, you've got 3 or 4 or 5 kids, you just lost your house. There's no roof over the kid's head, no food coming in or nothing, and your first priority is to take care of the kid. Well, in 1943, There was a little guy in here, he's 8 years old, and his first name is Noah. And I'm not gonna go into last names on this one, because his family's still around here. But his first name is Noah, like Noah's Ark, okay? And little Noah is in here with his mother, and little Noah catches the old-fashioned measles. And back in 1943, that would kill you. And it did. Little Noah passed away in this room. So the county commissioners signed a contract with the ambulance crews back in early, like I said, early 1920s. And what they did, they told the ambulance crews that when you go to pick up a corpse someplace, if you can't get it in to the morticians in Winchester, bring them out here. And they did. They brought a lot of corpses out here and actually stacked them right here along this wall on the floor. This is very true. It's happened. I couldn't hardly believe it. But they've stacked them right there. Now, when the morticians in town would get caught up with what they're doing, then they would come out here and work on these. So they went together and they bought an embalming table and put it right here where this table is today. And they put them up here on the table, on the embalming table, and they would flush them out and fill them up with embalming fluid and everything. And then they would wrap them in paper and put them right there in that cooler with the pork chops and the steaks and the bacon and everything else. Now, this is in the early 20s. Now I know that sounds horrific, but actually if you think about it, they've got the person wrapped up, sealed, and put in a cold contained area. That really wasn't that bad of an idea until 3 old ladies here got cholera and died. Then everybody in town thinks, okay, these morticians out here food poison these poor people. Well, that couldn't have been the case. It couldn't have been. Because if that would have actually happened, instead of 3, there would have been 40 people dead from food poisoning. So there was no food poisoning here. But that doesn't mean that them 3 old ladies didn't wheel their dirty clothes right by these doors going to the laundry down here to wash your clothes. And here's cholera laying right there along that wall. So that pretty much ended the makeshift mausoleum out here. That did it. It's no longer a makeshift morgue at all anymore. It put an end to it. It lasted less than a year. It really did. Okay. This is the room that Ida Gunkel hung herself in. It was 1938, and Ida was 57 years old. 2 years before she was put out here by her son, her oldest and favorite daughter passed away, and that set Ida over the edge. It really did. She lasted around outside of here for a couple more years, and then her son, who lived in Fort Wayne, had to come down and get her, and he admitted her out here. Now she had a room up on the first floor, and she was getting along pretty good, but every once in a while she'd go running and screaming up and down the halls, ripping at her clothes and stuff. And you got to remember, the caretakers out here, they're not trained psychiatrists or anything. They're just so they finally remembered that they do have this room down here that's got bars in the window. So they brought her down here and put her in this room. She got all of her clothes, her bed, and everything else is in this room with her. And one of the good things is that they never locked her door through the day. So in other words, Ida can get out of here to get her meals. She can socialize, she can go to the bathroom, she don't have to ask for permission and all that kind of stuff. But then at night, Mrs. Thornburg, who was a matron here at the time, would come through and lock her, close and lock her door, so she couldn't get out.
Now, you gotta remember, there's a highway out in front, there's 350 acres, there's a big deep gravel pit back over. They don't want Ida running around out there at night. They'd lose her, and that'd be bad news. So she gets locked in every night. So the one night Mrs. Thornburg went to lock her in, Ida asked her for a broom. Well, you can obviously see it's dirty in here. So Mrs. Thornburg didn't think anything about giving her a broom. And so she got her broom, gave it to her, locked her door, and went upstairs. 5:30 in the morning, Mrs. Thornburg comes down here to unlock Ida's room so she can get out for breakfast. And Ida is dead. And she's, if you can see the broom right up here, she took a piece of her mattress and tore it off and tied it around that broom. And then Ida stands on her bed, which would have put her head up above these pipes, tied it around her neck, and stepped off. I'm pretty sure that she's in here. Almost positive she's in here. So, that's Ida's story.